Hi, and welcome back to the British Accent Podcast. I'm Emily.
And I'm Nick. Today we're diving into a question that so many English learners have quietly asked themselves at some point. I've been learning for years, so why don't I feel fluent yet?
It's a tough one, isn't it? You've put in the time, the effort, you've studied grammar, done vocab drills, watched English films, maybe even passed exams. And yet, when someone asks if you're fluent, you hesitate. Not because you can't speak English, but because something inside you says, not quite.
And the tricky part is, fluency isn't this clear, black and white thing. It's not like one day you wake up and you're suddenly fluent. It's more of a spectrum. And for most people, there's this weird space between, I know a lot, and I feel confident using it. That space can feel huge.
Yes, and often, the problem isn't your English. It's your expectation of what fluency should feel like. You imagine that fluent speakers never struggle, never pause, never forget words, but that's just not true. Even native speakers forget words, get stuck, rephrase things.
Right, and if you're measuring your fluency by the absence of struggle, then you're always going to feel like you're not fluent, because some struggle is natural. That feeling of hesitation, of needing a second to think, doesn't go away. It just becomes easier to navigate.
And let's not ignore the emotional side of this. You might know the language, but still not feel fluent, because you don't feel safe or comfortable using it in real conversations. Maybe you're afraid of being judged, or you've had bad experiences that made you doubt yourself.
That's huge. Language isn't just skill, it's identity, confidence, connection. And if you're constantly second-guessing yourself or overthinking every word, you won't feel fluent, no matter how much you know. Your brain might have the knowledge, but your heart's still holding back.
And honestly, sometimes the people around you affect how fluent you feel. If your environment isn't supportive, if no one encourages you to speak, or gives you space to practice without pressure, it's no surprise that fluency feels distant.
Also, perfectionism. Let's talk about that. So many learners think they need to speak perfect English before they can call themselves fluent. But perfection isn't the goal. Connection is. Being fluent doesn't mean being flawless, it means being flexible, being real.
So if you've been learning English for years and still don't feel fluent, maybe it's not because you haven't learned it enough, but because you haven't trusted yourself enough. Maybe fluency isn't what's missing, maybe it's permission. Permission to show up as you are, accent and all.
Yeah, that word, permission, it's so important. Because many learners are still waiting for someone to tell them, now you're fluent. Now you're good enough. But the truth is, no one's going to hand you that certificate of confidence. You have to claim it yourself.
Exactly. And confidence doesn't come from reaching a certain level in a textbook. It comes from experience. From putting yourself in real situations and real conversations, even if your grammar isn't perfect. That's where growth actually happens.
And sometimes, it's also about recognizing that your definition of fluency might be outdated. Maybe you learned English in school and were told fluency means speaking quickly, like a native, without pausing. But actually, fluency is about flow, being able to keep a conversation going, even when it's imperfect.
Totally. If you can explain your thoughts, ask questions, and respond, even slowly, you're already communicating fluently. You don't need fancy words or native speed to be effective. In fact, slowing down can make your message clearer, not weaker.
There's also the fact that language isn't just academic, it's emotional. You might have spent years learning the rules but never had the space to express yourself in English. Not textbook dialogues, but your real thoughts, opinions, stories. And when you don't feel emotionally connected to the language, you feel disconnected from fluency too.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't realize that. They think it's just a knowledge problem, but often it's a relationship problem. How you feel about English. Whether it feels like a friend, or like a test you're constantly failing. That emotional relationship affects how freely you speak.
And let's be real, it's hard to feel fluent if you're constantly comparing yourself to others. Especially online, where people post perfect-sounding videos and seem so confident. But what you don't see are the edits, the practice behind the scenes, the nerves they still feel.
Fluency isn't always loud or showy. Sometimes it's quiet. It's choosing to speak up in a meeting, even if your accent's strong. It's asking a stranger for directions while traveling. It's sending an email without double-checking every sentence. These moments count. They build trust in your own voice.
So maybe it's not that you're not fluent. Maybe it's that you haven't given yourself the credit for the fluency you already have. Because when we stop measuring ourselves against some unreachable ideal and start seeing our daily wins, that's when things start to shift.
Exactly. And sometimes it helps to just look back. Think about the version of you from 2 years ago, or even 5. The one who maybe couldn't understand a native speaker's sentence, or needed subtitles all the time, or didn't even dare say a word out loud. You've come a long way, even if it doesn't feel like it yet.
Yeah, and fluency isn't something you wake up and feel one day, it's something you notice in the small things. Like when you understand a joke in a TV show without subtitles. Or when someone speaks quickly and you actually follow what they said. Or when you're tired and can still speak in English without freezing.
And I think one of the reasons you don't feel fluent is because your brain has already normalized your current level. You're not giving yourself credit because now, what once felt difficult, just feels expected. That's growth. You're standing in the very thing you used to dream of.
Right. It's like learning to ride a bike. At first, you notice every little wobble, every correction. But eventually, you're just riding, and you don't stop to think, wow, I didn't fall off today. That's how progress works. You don't always feel it, but it's happening in the background.
And you know what else? Sometimes the issue isn't that you're not fluent, it's that you're tired. You've been pushing yourself for so long, trying to reach this invisible finish line. Maybe what you need right now isn't more studying, but more space. More time to let what you've learned actually settle.
That's such a good point. Because language learning isn't just about speed, it's about depth. You can't force fluency. You grow into it. Some seasons are for learning, others are for resting. Both are necessary.
So if you're feeling like you're not fluent enough, take a breath. Reframe it. It's not failure, it's a phase. It doesn't mean you've gone backwards. It just means your mind is still putting the pieces together. Quietly. Subtly. And in time, it all connects.
You're not behind. You're just building something that takes time. Fluency is the result of all the invisible work you've done, every time you listened, read, repeated, stumbled, and tried again. It's not a prize you win. It's a rhythm you grow into.
And in that rhythm, there will be days when everything clicks, you'll speak with ease, understand without effort, even surprise yourself. And then, there will be days where your tongue feels heavy, your mind goes blank, and you wonder if you've made any progress at all. That doesn't mean you're failing. It just means you're human.
Exactly. And fluency isn't about never struggling. It's about knowing you can recover when you do. It's about trusting yourself in those moments of pause. Believing that you don't need to be perfect to be understood, and that every conversation, no matter how messy, is practice that counts.
I think one of the biggest shifts happens when you stop chasing fluency as this future goal, and start recognizing it in your present ability. Like, can you express your needs? Can you share an opinion? Can you ask for help? Can you describe your day? That's communication. That's connection. That's fluency.
And maybe the real question isn't, why don't I feel fluent yet? Maybe the better question is, why do I think I need to feel flawless to be fluent? Because what if fluency isn't about speaking without fear, but speaking through the fear anyway?
That's it. That's the shift. Because then it becomes less about chasing a feeling and more about recognizing the reality. You're already communicating in another language. That's incredible. That's not failure. That's not enough. That's fluency in motion.
And the more you show up, even on the hard days, the more you give yourself permission to speak, to make mistakes, to be seen, the closer you get to that feeling of freedom that so many people call fluency. Not because you've reached perfection, but because you've stopped demanding it.
And that kind of freedom doesn't happen overnight. It's built moment by moment, sentence by sentence, over time. Like when you stop translating in your head, without even realizing it. Or when someone asks you a question in English and you just answer, without panicking. Those are the milestones that matter.
And even when you do still translate or pause or second guess, it doesn't erase the progress you've made. People get stuck thinking every setback means they're not improving, but that's not true. Language is fluid. It grows, shrinks, and flows differently depending on your energy, your mood, even the topic you're talking about.
Yes. And fluency is personal. It's not about reaching some universal standard. It's about how you use English to connect with the world in your way. Your voice, your accent, your vocabulary, it's all valid. It doesn't need to sound like anyone else's to be powerful.
I love that. Because a lot of learners carry this hidden pressure to sound native when really, that's not the goal. The goal is to be understood. To share who you are, what you think, and how you feel. And you can do that with the voice you already have.
And to anyone listening who feels discouraged, who wonders if they'll ever feel fluent, just know, you're not alone. That feeling doesn't mean you're failing. It means you care. And that care is part of what keeps you growing. It's not a weakness, it's a sign of commitment.
That's the thing. If you're still here, still learning, still showing up even when it's hard, that is fluency in action. It doesn't have to feel smooth to be real. You're not waiting to arrive somewhere, you're already on the path. And every step counts.
And sometimes, just knowing that is enough to soften the pressure. Like, maybe you don't need to push harder right now. Maybe you need to pause and realize how far you've actually come. Because the effort you've made, the hours you've studied, the mistakes you've corrected, the conversations you've tried to join, they've all added up. Even if it's not loud or dramatic, it matters.
Right. And sometimes we're so focused on the final destination that we miss the everyday victories. Like replying to a message without checking the dictionary. Or understanding a podcast episode without pausing every 10 seconds. Or recognizing your own thoughts in English when you're walking alone. Those are wins. Quiet wins, but real ones.
We underestimate how much growth happens in silence. In the background. It's not always about bold improvement, it's about consistency. And being kind to yourself on the days you feel stuck. Because that's self-compassion. That's fuel too.
And one day, you'll look back and realize the version of you who once doubted their fluency has actually been speaking fluently all along. Just not in the way you expected. Because fluency isn't a finish line, it's a living thing. It grows with you. And it is already there, in ways you're only just starting to notice.
So if you've been wondering why you don't feel fluent yet, maybe the truth is, you are, in your own way. Maybe it's not that fluency is missing. Maybe it's just quieter than you thought.
That's a beautiful way to put it. Quieter than you thought, but no less real. Because sometimes we're waiting for a loud, dramatic sign that we've made it, but it turns out, fluency often feels ordinary. Like it slips in while you're busy living, instead of when you're obsessing over it.
Yes, and maybe the reason you don't feel it is because you've adjusted to it. Like how you don't notice your own breathing unless someone points it out. Fluency might be like that. It becomes part of you, so natural that you forget to acknowledge it.
And I think that's why reflection is so powerful. Just sitting down and thinking, What can I do now that I couldn't do a year ago? Or, what used to scare me that I now find easy? That's when you start to realize just how much you've grown.
It's not about chasing some ideal version of yourself. It's about seeing the version of you that's already here, doing the work, making the effort, showing up even when it feels invisible. That's not nothing. That's everything.
So if you're listening and still feeling unsure, just know this: fluency isn't always a loud victory. It's often a quiet confidence that builds slowly, and lives in all the tiny moments you're probably overlooking. Keep going. You're not falling behind. You're just evolving, quietly, steadily, honestly.
And maybe that's the gentle reminder we all need sometimes. Progress doesn't always feel like progress. But if you're showing up, trying, reflecting, even listening to this right now, you're already doing more than you give yourself credit for.
Exactly. Be proud of that. Because learning a language isn't just about vocabulary and grammar, it's about courage. And you've got that. Even on the days it doesn't feel like it.
So wherever you are in your English journey today, we just want to say, well done. Truly. You're not doing it wrong. You're just doing it in real life, with all its ups and downs.
Thanks for spending time with us on the British Accent Podcast. We hope today's chat gave you something to think about, and maybe even a little bit of peace.
Until next time, take care of yourself, and remember, fluency doesn't have to be loud to be real.